Excellent, thank you. Okay, so first off, equal opportunity statement. We are an equal opportunity employer and program. If anyone needs assistance with anything, we can assist with those aids. Next slide. And as you know, this meeting is being recorded. Please be advised that your image and voice will be captured and recorded during the video conference. Your participation in this video conference equals consent to be recorded. Okay, let's go to the next slide. All right, so here's a take on our agenda for today. You'll notice a little bit of a change that we're going to move public comment up to the front. The team took a look at the agenda, realized this meeting might be shorter than advertised, possibly. And if so, we didn't want to be hanging out forever waiting for public comment. So we are going to do that first. Then we'll do our roll call. I guess we're doing our agenda review right now. We'll save minute approval until after roll call. And then we have the report to discuss that you should have received last night by email. So that is our game plan for today. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Okay, so let's go to public comment. Public comment. If you would like to make a public comment, including any suggested future agenda items, please state your name and spell it so we can capture it correctly for the minutes, as well as the organization you represent, if any. Your comments are being recorded. However, if you would like your comments to be included in the meeting minutes, please submit them in writing via email to Vicki Carlson at vicky.carlson@esd.wa.gov. And please limit your comments to 2 minutes. Do we have anyone who would like to make a public comment? I'm honestly not even sure if we have anybody who would fall into our public comment group on the meeting yet. So we'll keep an eye for that. But let's go ahead to the next part, which I believe is a roll call. So Vicki, I will keep an eye on the waiting room if you would mind doing the roll call.
Sure. Thanks, Joy. John Devaney.
Present.
Mike Gempler. Delia Pena.
Good morning, present.
Elizabeth Strader. Edgar Franks. Michelle Besso.
I'm here. Good morning.
Rosalind again. Diana Lopez Batista as her proxy. Jeff Peralt.
Here.
So Ignacio and Marquez. I see that his computer's rebooting, but he was on.
Ignacio is just now joining. He hopped into the waiting room.
Okay, perfect. Juan Gamez or Jerry Cayard?
Here.
Caitlin Gates.
Caitlin is here, but on the phone and might have a double muting situation.
Okay. Has Mike Gempler joined? Elizabeth Strader? Rosalinda?
Okay.
No. Okay, we don't have a quorum yet, Joy.
Okay. All right. Well, let's go ahead into the discussion then. And we'll keep an eye for a quorum. Okay. So I'm going to turn it over to
everybody.
Bertha. You're doing that thing again where
right.
it's separated. So go ahead and be off camera if you wish. We've got some internet challenges.
Sure.
parts of the state today, so I will go ahead and turn it over to you and let you
Can you
walk
hear?
through. Yes, we can hear you fine.
Can Oh, okay, perfect. Yes, I, as you all know, am in Walla Walla, and it is exceptionally smoky over here. So, I don't know if that's causing internet issues, but it's pretty hazy in our part of the state. So, thank you, everybody, for having a kind of weekly back-to-back meeting. Thank you for your engagement between last meeting and this meeting. Um, you gave us a lot to work with from your comments last week. And so we have a updated report, and that was sent to committee members yesterday at approximately 7 p.m. So I guess maybe the first thing I'd like to do is just to confirm with committee members that they got it and they were able to access it. Maybe if any committee member present could tell us if they didn't get it.
You got a thumbs up from John Devaney.
Yep, I see that. Thank you, sir. Okay, perfect. Well, yes, so last week we committed to receiving feedback from committee members up until close of business on Tuesday. And we didn't receive any feedback from any committee member. I did get an email from a committee member this morning with good feedback, and that feedback had actually already been captured in the report revision. So just wanted to give everybody the heads up that we didn't receive additional comments between last meeting and this meeting. However, we did make changes, and the changes are reflected in the report draft that you received yesterday evening. So, Vicki, if you could please bring up the report, specifically the committee recommendation section. The other thing I want to remind committee members of, for those of you that maybe were not here last week, is that we do have placeholders for data, specifically as it pertains to ASWS data, site visits, field checks, discontinuation of services. And the reason is because this report will capture through our program year, which is 9/30/2026. However, it has to move on to additional levels of review. So we'll be able to add that year-end data prior to it being published. But you'll see that reflected now in the report as X's, which are placeholders. All right. So as Vicki brings up that committee recommendation section, does anybody have any questions about the process, about what our mandate is as a committee in writing this report? Okay. All right. So Vicki, I'm still seeing the slide. Okay, perfect. So if we could zoom in on page 24, please. Okay, perfect. So please note that the form, meaning like for example, that first line shouldn't be bulleted. The form, we will catch all of those things, and we will fix all of those things. However, what I'd like this committee to focus on today is just basically the substance of the report. So please try not to be distracted by misspellings or formatting things. Those will be caught as part of our review. Vicki, if you could maybe zoom in a little bit more so that we don't see page number 23. Okay, and then maximize a bit, please. Okay, so the RCW directs this committee every 2 years in its legislative report to offer recommendations to the department, to ESD, about uh, it, strategies to improve recruitment of U.S.-based workers to agricultural jobs. And there's a clause in there that states and any other like topic of interest related to the to ESD's administration of the H-2A program. So the first the first section or the first heading is Employment Security Department should provide the following data to the ASWS Advisory Committee to aid in its analysis and comment on department rulemaking, policies, implementation of RCW 50.75, and initiatives and the study of issues the committee determines requires consideration. So that is kind of the first bucket. And the bullet points are specific data that the committee requested that would help the committee in its analysis. So if you could scroll down a bit, and this section was written by our Workforce Services Division partners. This is on page 24 if you've got your own draft up. So I just want to give people an opportunity to look at this and just confirm that this captures the committee's intent. And Tim, maybe it would help the committee if you briefed kind of what's here.
Trying to get my mute off. There we go. Yes, the key elements that were brought up at the last meeting were around making sure we're creating more comprehensive data that helps us understand the impact of H-2A on the domestic MSFW workforce, and whether H-2A workers are displacing, or at least if we can find indicators that help us understand better whether we think H-2A workers may be displacing domestic migrant seasonal farm workers. Another one, and Mike, I want to make sure we captured this correctly from your point of view, if you're on, is looking at year-to-year changes. Are our domestic migrant and seasonal farm workers coming back and working at the same agricultural employers year after year, or in the same region, or in the same, coming back to Washington State as a whole and working in the industry? And if not, where are they going? Are they going to other states or going into different industries, or what? So we tried to capture both of those here in particular, since those were the two that were highlighted the most at the last meeting. So want to make sure we've got them correct.
Thank you, Tim. And I understand there's silence because we're reading, but I'd like to open the floor to the committee about whether this captures the discussion last Thursday, and whether this is acceptable. Yes, sir. John?
Thanks, Bertha. I think it captures most of the discussion from what I can recall. When I see data listed as a request, I might suggest just the editorial change. If it's not just we want to see information, but we want to understand what the metric is. So that entails maybe reporting data, but I think that what we're overall looking for is some means of measurement. And so maybe clarifying that it's not additional data points so much as finding a trackable measuring tool for some of these qualitative issues like equity that we've been discussing. On that equity point, I don't disagree with the language as written there. I am not sure that it was that narrowly focused when Rosalinda brought that up, but she's not on the call, so I don't know where to go with that other than to say that before we finalize it, we should probably circle back to make sure it's connecting to what she meant.
Thank you. That's very good feedback and noted.
By the way, Bertha, I just heard, this is Michelle. I just heard
Hi,
from
Michelle.
Rosalinda. She thought it was next Thursday, and she's at an all-day meeting in Seattle that I think she was in yesterday as well. And so unfortunately won't be joining us today.
Thank you, Michelle. Do you have any comment regarding the equity language and the concept around developing further metrics to analyze whether services are sufficient and equitable?
I don't, but I wasn't the person who brought it up, so I don't have anything more on that. Actually, just because I have the mic for a moment, I just want to mention, I realize I missed last week's meeting. I have listened to the call, but one thing about all this that I asked a question a while back and didn't get an answer is part of this statute also requested a report on agricultural wages. And for some reason, ESD has determined that that information can only be provided to the legislature and is not public or cannot be provided to the committee. And I guess when I think of this data and that statute, you know, I have not understood. So maybe it's put a pin in it, but I still want to understand why that, you know, the department is putting in all these resources to collect wage data from workers, and I don't understand why it can't be shared.
I hear you, Michelle. But yes, let's please put a pin in that. And whether we have it as a committee topic or whether we set up a meeting with Gustavo around our August meeting to discuss, we can work on getting clarity on that. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Thank you. I appreciate you raising it.
And Michelle, I'm taking notes to assist with preparation of the minutes. So when you state the part of the statute, are you referring to the recently added piece about that came from the House Bill 2226?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, perfect. I think actually that may be a good transition point to the next bucket, if you will, which has to do with ESD's data collection obligations under the House bill. And we discussed this. Oh, excuse me. One moment here. Vicki, can you scroll down for just a moment? Okay, so before we get to that bucket, there were some other things noted that committee members wanted to, actually, excuse me, Vicki, I think we may be in the third bucket. We need to, let's see, can you scroll up, please? I'm looking and not seeing the data collection recommendations. Can you scroll down a bit? Okay, right there. Thank you. Okay, stopping and let's see. So actually that bullet point there where your cursor is, if we could bold that just so that we can be clear that that is, no, the paragraph above. Just the bullet point right above that. Yep, that one. I want to bold that just because that's a heading. Okay, so we had really good discussion about this, which my team really appreciated because we need the committee's guidance with regards to our data collection pursuant to the recently added piece of the statute regarding collecting data about where uh, where H2A workers are working and living as of the date of our outreach visit, whether that be a field check or a site visit. So just to kind of set this up, I'm just going to read this first piece. Employment Security's current data collection process and quarterly data reporting procedures present the committee with primarily raw data. Without additional context or annotation from Employment Security about the data, the committee has struggled with how to analyze whether ESD's data collections comports with the intent of House Bill 2226. The committee understands the intent of House Bill 2226 to be a mechanism by which Employment Security can collect point-in-time data regarding the whereabouts of H2A workers on the date of field checks and site visits. This mechanism is especially important in times of natural disasters or public health emergencies, which is the point that Rosalinda made last week. So the next paragraph is us capturing the committee feedback that was stated last week. So it's short, so I'll just read that briefly. The committee recommends that ESD collect and annotate additional context from the employer when there are discrepancies between certified ETA 790 job order and employment security data collection form. For example, if the number of H2A workers requested in the ETA 790 does not match the number of H2A workers reported by the employer on Employment Security's data collection form, ESD should annotate the reason for the discrepancy. These reasons could include the employer having recruited domestic workers, the employer's staggering worker arrivals, or the workers not being issued a visa. Including this context will allow the committee to learn more about the circumstances and factors impacting employers not receiving and or not employing and housing the number of requested workers. I know that John Devaney gave excellent feedback in this area. Does this capture the committee's guidance and what the committee feels ESD should implement or add in its collection of data?
Bertha, it captures what I meant, and I don't think that that's the only example that I referenced, but the request for additional context, and that is an example, tracks with what I had been saying.
Great, thank you. And we also discussed last week that ASWS has struggled with not necessarily collecting the data, although there has been barriers. For example, if the employer declines to provide it, the model we have now is that employers self-report this data on a form that is collected as of the date of our visit. But the challenge, I think, for us has been to report it in a way that is meaningful for the committee and to understand how the committee wants, what the committee wants to know, or how we can present it in a way that is, helpful to you all. And I personally think that it's not helpful, but I that's what this discussion is about.
Bertha, could you repeat that last bit? What do you think is not helpful? I didn't catch that.
Sure. So the statute doesn't require any analysis by ESD, and it doesn't require any action by ESD if there is a discrepancy between what's on the ETA 790 and what is reported as of the date of the visit. And so we present the numbers to you in kind of raw form. You'll recall that it's, a graph that shows, the proportion of instances in which the data matches, the proportion in which it doesn't. There's also a comparison of, the number of workers that are requested, which is what we know, right? We don't, we don't, as the SWA, we don't know the number that enters. And so, it's kind of up to the committee to analyze kind of what that all means. And I know that we usually receive questions during that segment. And so we just want to make sure that it's getting to the intent of what the committee wants to use that data for. The kind of reasonable feedback that we get from employers is, well, why are you asking me for this? This is on the ETA 790. The work sites are on the ETA 790. The housing's on the ETA 790. Why this extra step? And of course, we explain that this is a point in time and kind of a corroboration. But the employers, in my opinion, the employer's feedback is well taken. So I just want to offer that because we've this is relatively new, but we just want to make sure that we're expending resources to do this work to.
So Bertha, are you looking to change the statute? Is that what, or?
I think that's on the table.
Because I keep hearing this. So I'm kind of getting an impression that you're really
So this is, I'm staff. Obviously, I don't have that, I mean, that the statute that explains the committee's mandate in preparing this report does state that you can recommend changes to the statute. And if the committee wants to go there, that is a place that you can go. But I offer, as staff, that the statute as written may not be accomplishing what the intent of the bill was, but that is for your discussion and for your recommendation. And of course, just to add, ASWS is responsible for the first section, Section A, which is the data collection. ESD is also responsible, although this is on our data department's plate, for the survey piece, which is which is not discussed in this recommendation. Go ahead, Michelle. Do you have a comment?
No, well, I was just going to say that I hear the concerns. I don't think we would be in this time frame, at least from my perspective. I don't think we're in a position to make a recommendation for change without some time. We would need to really look at it and think about what changes would be helpful and. Yeah, I guess I don't feel it's well taken. I understand the concerns. I just don't think we have time. I don't know what other people think to get there at this time.
John?
Yeah, thanks, Bertha. I would say that when the statute was passed creating this requirement, a lot of us in the employer community said at that time to the legislature that we thought this was going to be collecting a lot of redundant and currently available data, and it wouldn't really be telling us a lot. I don't know that our position has changed on that. I do think that right now what we're proposing to do, because that's what the statute calls for, is just showing where there is a mismatch. And I think that unless the legislature hears in our report what that is capturing, they might presume that a mismatch is a problem. And so, for example, if you find that workers are not in the housing that was originally authorized in the 790, Was that because they're housing someone in somewhere that's inappropriate and the data on the 790 was inaccurate, or was it a change? Housing was damaged or was delicensed or something else has come up and alternative permitted housing had to be found. In if Without the context of is this data locating problems or is it just a double duty paperwork requirement? I don't know that the proponents of the requirement are ready to change their position, but I would say from the employer perspective, we still tend to view this as a redundant capture of existing data.
Thank you, John. I appreciate that. Anybody else, any other committee or agency member that would like to comment here? And perhaps, perhaps the additional information that needs to be added to this section is that this is something the committee could analyze over the next 2 years and look at and perhaps come to a conclusion, if it recommends that something different needs to happen. But the department's happy to give additional information about how we're, about the form, how we arrived at the model, improvements to the form, etc. Go ahead, Ignacio.
Yeah, I just wanted to also state that I had the same concerns when the bill was passed, and I was unclear as to what the purpose of this was because I just didn't see how helpful it would be for the committee. But and I mean I'm only saying this because I was on record and it's in the minutes and it's in the video recording. I guess moving forward, I are we still going to continue to get reports or are we stopping? And I mean, unless it's changed, in the next session, I think we're stuck with it, right?
Yes.
Yeah, it would be business as usual. And the statute requires ESD to provide a quarterly report on this data. So we are moving forward business as usual, collecting it and reporting it.
Hey, thanks.
I think the other reason I'm being very cautious is it wasn't the committee that asked for it or discussed it and recommended it to begin with. You know what I mean? It's not really a committee project, but that's just from my perspective as someone who's not at the legislature. I guess I wasn't part of those conversations and don't. Yeah, I don't. So maybe that's why I don't necessarily see it as our role to take a position on it, but I'll just leave it at that.
So then here's a question. Would anyone on the committee have heartburn if the agency or the office, and probably not in the immediate term, because I don't think that this is going to rise to the level of an agency request legislation ask for this year. But if we started pointing out the discrepancy between what we can gather and its usefulness as an administrative, not as an opinion thing, but just as an administrative, this is a data collection that does not seem to be meeting its mark. And actually, now that I say that out loud, I'm realizing that is what the governor's office has asked us to identify. Things like that may be taking resources. John.
I would tend to agree, and I would say that this committee loves to make data requests. I'm just as guilty of that as my colleagues. But at some point, then we also come up against capacity issues and funding issues. And I think that this report has several requests in the previous paragraphs that we were just talking about, where we're talking about finding new data or new metrics to track and figuring out to what extent our data collection can also be more efficient, and are there things that we could do differently or stop doing while we focus on other things that are more impactful. Having that conversation generally is probably a good idea, and maybe making a more general point that that is going to be a topic of work for the committee over the coming 2 years might be appropriate.
I like that. That sounds good. Also, I just want to point out that when we started this in 2019 or whenever we started it, there was almost no data. And so, we did our best to figure out what do we need to collect. And we started collecting it and we started pulling it together from different sources. And we continue to refine that and refine that. So it's absolutely appropriate that now, 6, 7 years in, we are going back and taking a look of, is this hitting the mark? How do we continue to tune it correctly? So I appreciate that.
Yes, thank you. That is very helpful. And to Michelle's point, that your point is very well taken. This wasn't a agency request legislation. However, it is part of our chapter, so I think it is appropriate and fair game for the committee to analyze the statute and ESD's work and make recommendations. So I think you're all within your lane in looking at that because it is within our chapter in the RCW. Okay, anything else on this section before we move to the next? Okay, thank you all. And my team really appreciates the committee's feedback in this area because we've struggled with this over the last 2 years. Okay, next section, employment security. Boost recruitment
You're
and
completely
placement of
cutting out.
U.S.-based farm workers to egg butter here of what you're called to opine
Bertha?
connection. Can you hear me now? Yep.
Yeah,
Can you hear me now?
Go ahead and start that part over, please.
Okay, sounds good. I'm sorry. I'm not sure what's going on here, but okay. So I was just commenting this next section, employment security should focus on specific strategies. This is like the third bucket under the committee recommendations. And this, as I said, this is kind of your bread and butter as a committee, making these types of recommendations to ESD. So the first piece at the last, and this piece of impact of DHS activities, I don't know if it belongs in this section, but we parked it here because we wanted to capture it. This is something that Rosalinda brought up last week to mention that there has been an impact since approximately January 2025 of DHS immigration enforcement activities. So I don't know, again, if this is the section to put this in or if we need to put this maybe, above. But I do want to talk with the committee about if there's any recommendation to ESD regarding this section. You'll see it kind of trails off. Employment security should ... In our discussion last week, there wasn't a suggestion about what ESD should do in light of this enforcement activity or in this environment. So I just want to hear from the committee, is this, and I noticed something that's not here, but is this just more of an FYI that we need to maybe put earlier in the report, or was there some type of direction from the committee to ESD about how to, do its work in this environment?
So this is Michelle.
Yes,
Rather
ma'am.
than number one, unfortunately, I know we want to finalize it today, but I think Rosalinda is may need an opportunity to respond to this. But in my mind, it's just really important. I'm not sure what to do differently. I think it's just really important if we're doing a report about the recruitment of farm workers, that we acknowledge this reality on the ground. It's just such a, I mean, it's sort of like when I read the first report, I was like, you wouldn't know this was Eastern Washington or Washington State. Like, there was just no color in it of where are we at? What is happening on the ground, right? What is the reality of farm workers right now? And there's just like it was all agency, 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 right? The whole first 20 pages is what ESD is doing, which is great. It's doing a lot of good things. But it's like, are there workers somewhere represented in this? Do you know what I mean? Is there like what is the report from the ground a little bit more? I feel like that's and there's two pieces to that. One you mentioned briefly somewhere else, which is a reduction in wages and an amount of work. I mean, this is something that the migrant and seasonal farm work, the MSFW outreach person who came and talked to us in Olympia referenced. There not being, full-time work for many of the workers. And I talked to people at the clinics and the need for food is really up and the need for, you know, so there's just a reality right now. And this is a big part of it, the immigration, that just has to be acknowledged if we're looking at how we're going to move forward. So I'm not sure other than recognizing some of what the reality is out here.
Point well taken, John.
Thank you. I'm not entirely sure where this context should go. This is because this is sort of placed under recommendations or action items, and it sort of concludes with an unknown ESD should. I think that we were talking about the fact at the last meeting that the committee should be working on actions to improve and track domestic recruitment. And this is part of the context in which that's happening. And it's why the committee needs to spend more time working on how the agency should be pursuing that goal in a changed environment. For example, we had earlier a point about returning workers and how many of them are returning to the employer in subsequent years. Well, if people are self-deporting or have been deported, that's obviously going to impact those numbers. So this plays into context for a number of our goals, and I think probably it should go earlier in the report rather than be an immediate action item or recommendation. But it does reemphasize why we should be prioritizing this discussion, because not only does it remain a long-term goal, but existing things that the agency has been doing to try to meet this goal probably need to be adapted for a changed environment.
That is excellent feedback. And Michelle, thank you for what struck me most is when you said, color, and there needs to be a discussion about what things look like in 2026 and what the specific challenges are, et cetera. So that color, should that be because this is kind of the committee recommendations is kind of like the committee's voice, and it's like specifically what the committee offers, and it's likely the most important piece of the report and the most useful piece of the report. Should that, John, to your point, should that kind of context and that discussion be an introduction to this section?
Probably, because that, especially depending on how the language is formatted, I'm guessing that this is a more condemnatory phrasing of administration policy, and I suspect that the committee should be saying that rather than agency staff.
Definitely.
And so, but it should be at the beginning because it's the context for a lot of what's going on in subsequent points. And this is the first time I'd seen that language because I didn't, it wasn't highlighted as an addition in the, in the text itself. So when I got it last night, I didn't scan through and catch that immediately. So maybe we want to take a little bit of time as a group and see if there's any way that that introduction is phrased that, we want to redo. And perhaps based on this conversation, you want to provide an alternate opening based on Rosalinda's suggested language, or do you want 6 different drafts coming back at you?
No, I think that, so in this section, and I think the committee has a lot of freedom in this section, and of course you are approving it as a body, so you're going to all have to, agree on the actual language, right? But I would maybe recommend a kind of a discussion to open this section about what the what what things are like on the ground in 2026, what the environment is, etc. And then go into your kind of numbered recommendations. But so I think it makes sense to kind of put the committee's voice all together there. And staff is happy to, provide kind of a first draft of that based on this conversation.
Yeah, agreed. I think that makes a lot of sense to start with that.
And we do have a little bit of leeway. I mean, obviously, ideally, we would approve this today and kind of way in our review, but we do have an in-person meeting scheduled in about less than 30 days. And so we can do a lot of draft work in between that time and get the report polished up so that we can get a final approval in August. Okay, so let's move on to the third bucket, if you will. Or excuse me, we're in the third bucket, excuse me. The next subsection of the third bucket, which is a discussion about overcoming structural barriers to recommendations. And this was written in response to or at John's recommendation about how the committee in its work is meeting some firewalls, right? Structural firewalls, systemic firewalls. And the specific example used here is the committee's 2 requests to USDOL regarding the name suppression requirement. And as we both know, both of those requests were denied. So I just want to call your attention to kind of this last piece and just want to make sure that this accurately captures what the committee's thought is moving forward. So the committee recognizes that the structural barriers, often regulatory, that the employment security and US-based applicants navigate are often out of employment security's control. However, the committee recommends employment security continue to identify systemic barriers and communicate with the committee regarding potential strategies to overcome or mitigate their impacts. John, does that capture kind of the spirit of kind of moving forward despite these things?
Yes, that captures what I was recommending at the last meeting.
Thank you. And Michelle, I see a thumbs up from you. Are you anything you'd like to add to this piece?
It sounds good to me.
Okay, thanks. All right, any other committee members? Basically, this section is saying like, we can have good ideas and we can move forward with them, but ultimately there's factors out of our control that can negate our efforts, but that we should basically continue trying is the point that we're trying to make here. Okay, moving on to this next piece, which which is really important and certainly something that my staff talks about a lot, and something that we're prioritizing our focus on around this idea of the employer's obligation regarding positive recruitment. So I'm going to read this paragraph just because I think it's necessary to read it together to kind of set the table. Positive recruitment, or the employer's acceptance of U.S. applicants from all sources, including SWA referrals, walk-ins, direct inquiries, etc., is required by 20 CFR 655135C. It begins upon the SWA's acceptance of the job order, and the employer's positive recruitment obligation continues until H-2A workers depart from their permanent residence. Additionally, H-2A employers are obligated to continue accepting and hiring qualified U.S. applicants between the H-2A workers' departure from their permanent residence until the 50% of the contract period, also known as the 50% rule. The committee is interested in learning more about Washington H-2A's employers' compliance with positive recruitment obligations, particularly whether U.S.-based former employees are actively being notified about H-2A job opportunities, and/or whether farm workers employed in previous years remain in Washington state. Employment Security should provide education and technical assistance to H-2A employers to confirm they understand their positive recruitment obligations and are complying. Additionally, Employment Security should strive to discover instances in which positive recruitment is not occurring and process those violations in accordance with the ES complaint system at 20 CFR 658 subpart E. And this discussion was pretty healthy last week. Mike Gempler had a lot of good feedback in this area. And Michelle, I understand that this is something that you also want to focus on. So give me your feedback.
I really appreciate the addition of this, Bertha, because I think it's but I think something is missing here, which I think merits further attention on the education, on all these fronts. And that is the obligation to notify former and present workers of the job opportunity. If we could add that regulation in as well, because that's, I think, the area we're seeing, at least in and of course we all have our own limited blinders, right? Or what we're aware of. But the part that I'm really seeing a lack of full compliance, and I'm wondering how much focus is placed on it in training, is that responsibility because it goes to the issue where Mike is asking, are former employees returning? Are former employees applying? Right? And that's a really important question, like Mike said, and part of the context of that is, what is the opportunity for them to apply? Right? And are they being notified of the availability of the contract and then given the opportunity? And then are they turning it down? Or, that's part of the data, right? But so anyway, I would suggest adding something about that other regulation.
Okay, John?
Yes, in light of the earlier conversation we had about duplicative data collection, I think one of the things that we should flag is that a lot of this accountability is being monitored elsewhere. Employers have to do the positive recruitment, and they have to track and report to U.S. Department of Labor their ongoing recruitment efforts. And I think that we should recognize that a lot of that monitoring may be happening elsewhere and is just not visible to everyone on the committee. And where that positive recruitment is happening, as Mike mentioned in the last meeting, you're meeting your requirements to reach out to the last, contact means that you had available, and that employee may no longer be reachable at that address or phone number. And so I think that discussion needs to be incorporated there. That there may be data tracking this, but it might not be accessible to this committee.
And John, just to clarify, when you say that it's being tracked elsewhere, are you referring to the recruitment reports that must be filed with Office of Foreign Labor Certification by the employer?
Yes.
Okay.
So just to clarify, I'm not saying we should put in this that they are failing to comply. I just think we need to focus on looking at that positive recruitment. Not to disagree with John, but I have done FOIAs and I have seen those recruitment reports. And I have never seen DOL do anything with those recruitment reports. And two, I've seen many of them that are basically just repetition of the statute and really don't give much information. So I don't think you can tell from those whether the employer has complied or not. We have several cases where the employer has put on those recruitment reports that they have complied, and yet when asked for those letters, they're not able to produce them. And DOL does not require that they produce them or that they explain how it is that they complied.
Thanks, Michelle. And I agree that in many cases that is, I think, the reality. I mean, obviously not true across the board, but I think that, that does happen. And so if just want to kind of ask the committee, so obviously this is a pre-certification and a post-certification because, then you've got recruitment obligation through 50%. But so oops, can you hear me? I'm getting a low bandwidth message. Can you give me a
Yes.
thumbs up if you can hear me? Okay, perfect. So this, in theory, is something that is the accountability mechanism or party is USDOL. What, if anything, or what, if any, role should ASWS play in, quote, policing this? Can you give me some feedback in that area?
Bertha, I feel like I'm talking too much, but this is why I think that our action or recommendation is that the committee spend more time on this, because ensuring that the processes work and that there are means of tracking accountability and legal compliance is going to require a lot more discussion. I don't think that we're in a position to make a recommendation for an immediate policy change or action. I think that we're identifying this as an area where the committee needs to spend some dedicated time working over the next year or two.
Thank you. That's really helpful. And just from a staff perspective, I'm feeling like really encouraged that we have, kind of what's emerging is these specific topics that the committee wants to talk about over the next 2 years and focus on. And so that's really helpful from a staff perspective. Okay, so we'll continue. We'll look at this section. We'll continue to work on it. If we could scroll down, I think that might be the end. Okay, so there was other changes. So at the top, and Vicki, you can stay here on this page, but there was a recommendation about how we represent data specifically as it pertains to applications that are withdrawn by the employer, which usually happens pre-certification. And our table that we present every month is basically the purpose of that is basically to kind of demonstrate the work volume that our FLC team is doing and the type of work that we're doing. However, the point was well taken that, to kind of a layperson or just the data presented by itself, it looks like that number of workers is being subtracted from the number of workers certified, even though they weren't likely ever certified. So that fix has been implemented, and thank you for that feedback. The other piece that was requested to be added was a section just kind of setting the table about the funding environment, particularly at the state level, and how that could impact our work. Joy, I believe you have some language that I don't think made the cut last night, but that will be added in here. Do you want to make any comment about that?
Actually, I can read it out loud if I can find it in my email. We're working with government relations and making sure that what we're saying is accurate. But we are talking to how this office's work and our service to the agricultural community in general is supported with federal and state funds. Federal funds have been flat, state funds have declined, and just very simply making that point of this is declining resources.
Joy, would you mind putting that proposed language in the Zoom chat?
Oh, that I could do. And Vicki, thank you for finding it for me. I really appreciate it. Let me drop it in the Zoom chat, and then I will again read it out loud so you all have it. But we're going to put a section in here, just a couple sentences. ESD's efforts in this area are supported by a combination of federal and state funds. Federal funding has been flat for foreign labor certification and other efforts, leaving the agency to absorb the impact of inflation pressures. State revenue, which supports ASWS compliance staff, has declined the past 2 years and is not expected to increase during the next biennium. ESD continues to carefully monitor and steward available resources to best serve our agriculture community. What we were looking for was a plainly accurate and objective statement that set the stage for what we were discussing.
So, Joy, just to confirm, regarding state revenue, which supports ASWS compliance staff, has declined. Last year, we had an agency decision package, which was approved, that allowed for the reclassification of our compliance staff from program specialist 3s to 4s, and also provided additional travel funds. In light of that, do you propose any change to this language, or?
I don't, because
Okay.
the technical detail is the underlying money comes from CPP fund, which is a small additional tax that is collected as part of UI. And that fund, the legislature in the past biennium chose to direct elsewhere to fit other gaps as well. That really did, even though the distinct piece of what was allowed for ASWS on what we needed for the reclass and such doesn't mean that our overall revenues in this agriculture space broadly is increasing or stable. It is unfortunately not. So looking at it more broadly, then yes, we did get that reclass budgeted for. We did right size the travel budget to match what we actually needed to do this work. but there's other challenges in that the underlying funding is being directed elsewhere. John?
Yeah, I appreciate the call out to the fact that the state budgets have been under pressure and that we have not seen additional increases in the federal share, which we had some success in doing for a while, and then it has slowed down. And I think that there's a need to make additional effort there. I would just maybe take exception to the last few words of the text that you put in the chat, which makes this sound like it's a fee for service program when a lot of what we're doing is regulatory in nature. And this should be a funding priority for the state. If we're wanting to make sure that the compliance is where it should be, that is not purely a pay to play processing your application issue. A lot of domestic recruitment and enforcement is a general state workforce priority. And so I'm worried that if we talk about it in this way, that it's going to set up an invitation to slap a user fee on this and say problem solved, when that's really not the best way to address what is a public priority.
That is an incredibly good point. And I think I want to play with the idea of something like this, perhaps with different wording for the last sentence, probably belongs in this section about budget and costs incurred. And I also think that if the committee wishes to, making that point that this is a basic funding priority for the state and should be treated as such, would be appropriate in the committee response section. What do you think? And it's perfectly fine to say,
committee recommendation section, Joy?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah, and I would just say that that also gets back to that point about reviewing some of our data collections. There are costs to some of these, and figuring out how we can continue to improve the program, but also find cost savings where it may be potentially, achievable.
Absolutely.
Okay, great. Great feedback. So, so anything else, like, kind of a call for any further recommendations by the committee? Obviously, we just added one there regarding priority of funding this regulatory compliance work. Is there any, I guess, thing that is a glaring kind of omission here in the committee recommendation section? And Vicki, if you could please scroll up a bit, that we need to look at developing. And really, even though there's 3 buckets, which may kind of, be minimal, there's a lot here to unpack. And there's, they're high impact areas to work on. Go ahead, John.
Yeah, I'm not sure if this is an additional or if it's an amendment to I think it should be a committee recommendation, is I guess what I'm saying, but it gets to that budget point, which is previously the state has communicated to Congress and the congressional delegation that they should be increasing funding for compliance programs to support implementation. I'm not sure that given all of the things going on in the federal budget, that always stays at the top of the priority list, and maybe calling that out as a committee recommendation to ESD and the state government generally, that we should continue to request proportional increases based on the workload that we see now and the potential growth that may occur, given that this administration really wants to have greater usage of the H-2A program as a compensation for added immigration enforcement. If that is the federal government's position, then they should be increasing funding for implementing the H-2A program.
Yes, and also as we discussed last week, the dairy activities will now be added, and as we spoke about last week, there hasn't been any guidance or specifics about that rollout, but it is confirmed that is happening, which will um, impact our work. It will be additional job orders, additional compliance work, and education, obviously. Okay, any other comments from the committee before we kind of zoom back out and talk about next steps? Go ahead, Ignacio.
Yeah, I don't think it belongs in the report, but I think moving forward, I think what I would appreciate is because this committee is about, helping the agency fill these H-2A jobs with domestic workers. I in the meetings that we've been, I don't see a sort of a running total of like, okay, well, how many referrals were made to all these jobs and how many were hired on a regular basis. So it's really hard for me to not to see whether we're making any progress in the referral part or the placement part. We have to wait till the report is being written, I guess. So, like I said, I don't know if that fits into the report, but it's just something that I've been kind of wondering about for the last few months is like, well, how are we doing with referrals? I mean, what are we doing? I know we talk about outreach, we talk about, the work that the MSFWs are doing and the collaboration and so on, but I don't see anything to show how well that's going.
So, Ignacio, am I hearing that this may be a request from the committee to provide information about referrals as a monthly report out?
I don't want to speak on behalf of the whole committee. I mean, I'm a non-voting member, but it's interesting to me that I, I, I'm not clear as to how well we're doing on referrals.
I think that's a good point. So that
It does
data
seem
would,
like a good point.
yeah.
I have to say. Thank you, Ignacio.
So now that wouldn't data wouldn't come from ASWS, it would come from our Workforce Services division. So I'm wondering if it's Tim, I don't know if you can speak to whether that data could be available on a monthly basis.
Yeah, and I may need some help from Alberto on this one too, but I think we can get it on a monthly basis. And we can also get trend lines over time too to see if referrals are going up or down. But Ignacio, I'd really like to know whether that is, fully what you're looking for, if we need more than just that much.
Well, I
And
mean, I could ask for, a lot, but I know that there's limitations on that. And I don't want to overwhelm, the meetings with data that's unnecessary. But I mean, to me, it would respond to the concerns or questions that everyone has about, well, do people even know about these jobs? Are they being referred and are they getting placed? And so there's a lot of chatter out in ag community that, people don't show up.
Mhm.
These jobs are being taken by H-2A workers. So it's like, okay, well, what data do we have to let us know whether that is happening or not? And we can't really, we can't rely on farm workers telling them. I mean, we can, but I mean, they don't have the data to prove that they are being displaced or they're not getting referred. So what's the next best thing we have? Well, we have, the state. that can tell us what are they doing.
Is monthly versus quarterly a key issue here?
Yeah, and I wanted that's exactly what I wanted to say actually, since you asked me to chime in, Tim, is and especially since we've been talking about like, burden of requesting data, right? We do have that data. We can provide it. I think monthly seems like maybe too frequent when you consider the existing cadence that we have. Like, could we commit to providing it as part of every meeting that we have here? I think we can. I do believe quarterly would make a lot more sense to do so, though.
Ignacio, would quarterly be okay with you?
Yeah, I
If I may jump in here, I'm sorry to interrupt you, Ignacio. This is Ismaila Maidadi from the Workforce Services Division. We do not get wage data monthly. We receive wage data quarterly. That's important because that is how we can determine employment. So if we are providing not just referral but employment, we will need to do that on a quarterly basis because we will need to match the people we serve with the wage data. Because we would love to say that every customer we serve picks up our phone when we call them after they get employment to tell us they're employed. Unfortunately, that is not the truth. The truth is once our customers get employed, we don't always hear from them from that moment on, and we rely on the wage data to be able to match the people we serve to employment.
Yeah, that makes sense because I think that referrals is one thing, and like you pointed out, that the wage data doesn't come out on it only comes out on a quarterly, so you wouldn't really know whether that referral ended up being a placement. So, at this point, yeah, I mean that's perfectly fine with me. But I would let other committee members speak too.
John, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. This is one of the issues that I had in mind when I was thinking of a broader discussion about domestic recruitment and placement. And before I ask the agency staff to start throwing data at us, I want to make sure that I understand what exactly it means and where the gaps there. Because in the past, we've had conversations about knowing that a worker was given a referral, did they follow up on it? Did the worker not pursue the referral? Did the employer reject the referral? Was there a problem? Was there ultimately employment? Not knowing what the meaning of the data that were presented will be. I think that I would like to have that conversation about, is that data going to be useful, or is it going to tell us that a certain number of workers were sent off into the wilderness and we have no idea what became of them? So I would just say that if we're talking about resource allocation, this is a good topic for discussion, but I want to know, is the data actually going to be valuable before I ask the staff to march out and start collecting and formatting it for us?
Okay, noted. Thank you for that point. So, Tim, maybe we'll take that back and talk amongst staff and kind of see what our capacity. Thank you. Great. Okay, anything else from other committee members? That was an excellent point, Ignacio. Thank you. Any other things that need to be addressed or would be kind of a striking omission if they weren't included? Okay, thank you. All right, so next steps. I think that a potential goal today was to have a committee action to approve the substance of the report. Joy, unless you disagree, I don't think we're there yet. I think we've got some. Okay, I think we've got some things to further develop.
Yeah.
And that's okay. We have some time built in. and not to create a pressure around the committee, but to stay on schedule, we will absolutely have to approve at our August meeting, which is an in-person meeting. It's in Olympia. We will have hybrid capability, but we will absolutely need a quorum at that meeting to take action. So please, plan on attending in person if possible. And so that'll be our time frame. In the interim, does the committee have would the committee like to see a updated draft with the understanding that we couldn't add new sections at this point, but we could certainly receive feedback about, the language that we use, whether it needs to be further developed, etc. Would that be helpful and acceptable to the committee? And John, what I heard you say earlier too was that it may be helpful. I'm kind of surmising this, but would it be helpful if we used like a track changes mechanism or something like that, so it's explicitly clear what's been changed since the last time the committee saw it?
Yes. Yes, definitely to the track changes. I think that helps everyone be efficient with their time. And I think that having a revised draft as soon as possible before the August meeting so that we have a chance to review that language well in advance of the meeting would be great. Otherwise, I think everyone would go back to this version and then we'd be presented with something else on the day of the meeting for final approval.
Thank you. Any other feedback regarding draft control or anything like that?
Well, I'm just trying to think, especially I was thinking of the people that aren't here today. Is there a way for anyone to provide proposed additional language ahead of the meeting, or are we thinking people will come to the meeting with proposed language in hand? I'm just trying to think how to get any input between meetings from people that aren't here.
Michelle, that's a really good point. How about we take that to make certain that there is, one more feedback loop to be sure. If there is an opportunity to get you all a draft, perhaps collect some feedback on it and share that feedback ahead of the meeting. That might be a little tight given the timing, but we'll see what we can do. And we should be able to do this. Okay.
I think that's really helpful because I think it's easy. It'll be more efficient, I think, in terms of actually just approving at that August meeting. So anyway, thank you.
Yeah, agreed. Also, for the committee's reference, yes, we have time. At the same time, there are a couple parts of the review process through communications, through government relations, internal to the agency that will need to begin on drafts. So we will possibly be doing those concurrent with locking down this final draft. But the text is not locked until the meeting on the 17th or 13th or 13th. So.
Yes, and just Vicki, I mean, I know I'm speaking on behalf of Vicki too. I just want to thank everybody for their patience. Ideally, we would have a draft out to you 2 weeks before, and we would have, I mean, we understand that you all have day jobs and you're exceptionally busy, and thank you for making time for this. And we really do strive to get it out as soon as we can, but there are factors outside of our control. There's multiple kind of hands in the pot, and we're thankful for that, for the support in writing this report. But sometimes that means that you're getting this like the night before, but what we'll do to kind of mitigate that is we'll be more intentional about highlighting what's changed so that you can, focus your attention and not have to kind of read the entire thing again. Okay, so just moving forward, we will further develop the sections as discussed today. We will send out another draft and invite additional feedback from committee members. We will provide a cutoff date for when that feedback is due, and we will then provide a final draft for approval by the committee at our August 13th meeting. And stressing again that we will need a quorum at that meeting to approve. And if we do not have a quorum, we may have to schedule a special meeting to keep things on track. So please prioritize your attendance. Any other questions about the report process? I think this is going to be a great report. Okay, Joy, over to you.
All right. Vicki, let's go ahead back to the slide deck. Yeah, all right. So I do have 2 items for good of the order before we move on. First off, I forgot to say out loud last meeting that the wage survey results that Gustavo and our Lemur unit sent a note about in late June, early July, those were resubmitted to USDOL on July 10th. Forgot to say that at the last meeting, my apologies, but that did happen. The other thing that I wanted to mention, some of you may have seen this in the news if you read the state standard. I don't know if it's gotten picked up anywhere else in the past couple days. I'm going to drop a link to a governor's press release into our chat, but we had some news come out from the agency yesterday, and I just wanted to explain a little bit of it. So, backstory, in the Department of Enterprise Services, their leader is stepping back from his position as director of that agency. They will be recruiting for a new director in that space. The governor's office will, but in the meantime, they have asked that our commissioner, Cami Feek, be over there as the interim director for the next period. I think we're guessing a few months. She has indicated, at least to senior leadership in the agency, very firmly that this is a temporary assignment and she will be coming back to ESD. I wanted to say that out loud. And our Chief Operating Officer, Martin McMurray, is going to be the interim commissioner. We'll arrange an introduction when we're all in person in August. I don't think many of you have met Martin, but I've worked with him for many years, and he is very, very knowledgeable in all spaces around ESD's work. And when it comes down to it, this is not going to change anything about how the agriculture community and ESD work together. So that is just something you may have seen in the news. I wanted to address it up front and offer an opportunity for any questions or feedback.
I thought she was just going to do 2 jobs.
Me? Oh God, no. No. I'm having a fun enough time with this one. This one is a big learning curve, and I'm good with it. Thank you. Michelle, I see you came off mute.
Well, I actually came off to ask about something else you said. You did mention that the 2024 wage survey results had been submitted. I appreciate the heads up. But I did have a question about the 2025 wage results.
I have utterly no idea on that one.
Okay.
So, I have a note, Michelle, to reach out to Gustavo, and I will let him know that is also the committee's question.
Thank you.
Sorry, if I don't make these notes, I will never remember. Okay. All right. And right here at the end of the meeting, we do have a quorum. So Vicky, could you bring forward the minutes of our meeting last week? Members, these were included in the note you received yesterday. All right. And by the way, thank you very much for all the feedback from that you gave us in last week's meeting. As you see, that formed the basis for much of what we shared here today. We continue to take further notes. But if the committee is ready, I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
John Devaney, I'll move approval of the July 16th meeting minutes.
Thank you, John.
Gempler, I second.
Thank you, Michael. All in favor, please say aye.
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 If there are any opposed, please say nay. All right, the meeting minutes from July 16th are approved. Okay, we did public comment at the top, so I think that brings us to adjournment. As we said, our next meeting is Thursday, August 13th, from 11 to 3 here at Maple Park in Olympia. We will also have the virtual option available if needed. As Bertha said very clearly, we will need a quorum at this meeting. So I will be checking in with everyone ahead of time to make certain that we know who will be there, who's going to be virtual if needed, where proxies may be available, to ensure that we have the full participation. So, and we've got a few other things to talk about in that meeting as time permits. So I look forward to an exciting agenda and a robust conversation. And with that, my friends, we are adjourned. Thank you very much.
Thank you.